5 team building strategies specifically for work. I'm Chad Littlefield. I have employed these strategies with well over 100,000 plus people, figured out what works and what doesn't work. And in this video, I'm really simply just going to share my top 5 strategies for building really strong teams. I also call these strategies 5 ingredients for engagement. I also call them the 5 locations for contribution. And so in other words, the way that I think about team building is not how do we do it all at once on this day. What I think about is you've got a bunch of work to get done. So how do you roll team building in throughout your 365-day year in a way that doesn't overburden people, doesn't pull them out of their work too much, and that doesn't build resentment because you're doing too much of this team building thing all at once, keeping them away from whatever it is they have to do. And so the first concept I got from a dear friend, Mark Collard. It's this idea of an unofficial start. Typically in a work context, we reward people for being late by waiting for them. It's 9:02. Oh, Sandra said traffic. Ed said blah, blah, blah. Right? Excuse. Cue twiddling thumbs, cue getting last email out. Okay, Sandra's here, now we begin. What Mark would say is, no. People's time is really precious. What if we begin a few minutes before the official start with something that is designed to spark immediate and purposeful contribution and engagement, and then run that unofficial start a few minutes after, maybe to 9:03, 9:04, to extend understanding for traffic and Wi-Fi connection and kid drop-off line being extra long, whatever else. In other words, if you want to build a strong team over time, pay attention to all the margins that could be used for meaningful connection. And so an unofficial start, what would it look like if as a culture, the idea was as soon as we show up, regardless of who is there, we immediately kick off with a question that invites people's contribution around what we're going to be talking about that day. Or another action-oriented example of an unofficial start would be everybody comes in and say, hey, we've got 60 seconds on the clock. Can you go research something about the topic we're meeting about and bring back one fact? And we'll just all dump it in the chat or quickly go around and share that one quick idea that we learned in the 2 to 3 minutes of research right before we get started. Second strategy, I call the context hook. And this is a really important idea that is very often overlooked. It is the 60 seconds in a meeting or a gathering that influences directly the next 60 minutes of time that you might spend together as a group. And that is, even though we're on the same video right now, we are not in the same context. You're in a different seat, it's a different temperature, you're probably not wearing this insane shirt, right? Everything except for this video is different. And so a context hook in a meeting context is you gotta do and or say something to loop everybody into the exact same moment. For me, the easiest, lowest prep way to do a context hook is to A, get really clear about why you are actually meeting with that group of people right now. What's the intent? An intent is not, we have a meeting every Monday. That's not an intent. What is the intention for this Monday's meeting? Get clear about that intent and make sure you add "so that" to the end of it so you can incorporate other people's, what other people care about. So our meeting might be to report out what you did last week so that everybody feels less confused this week. Do you see that? That one intention now invites everybody to play the same game in this moment. Strategy number 3 feels like cheating. It works so well for team building, particularly over time, and that is the experience of connection before content. It's not a concept, that's not an idea, it's not a strategy. It is the experience of connection before content. Meaning, when you host a gathering, if there are 6 people in that gathering, you have an opportunity to divide the group in half and split them up into small, intimate conversations that they can have. In other words, you split one meeting into 2. So you're being immediately 2x productive. So 2 times as productive as soon as you split people up. The intent for that connection before content is threefold. You ready? Take notes if you need to. It's gotta connect people to each other. Duh. but rarely happens in meetings. So does it connect to the human beings in the room, not the human doings? Number 2, and this takes it out of icebreaker category and puts it into a much more intentional category, it's got to connect to the purpose of why you're actually there. ingredient number 3, it's got to create at least the choice or space for authenticity and vulnerability. So in other words, can people tell the truth? So the easiest way to do this is a single question that meets all 3 of those criteria, break people out into small groups of 3, have a discussion, come back, and just ask what struck you or what you notice. That little process, that like whole group into 3, back with what struck you, takes 7 to 15 minutes to do that, 7 to 12 minutes to do that, a handful of times a month. That is way more sustainable team building than going bowling for 7 days straight with your team, or going river rafting. Maybe not river rafting, that'd be pretty fun. Point is, it's a much more sustainable way to actually build a team in little micro moments throughout. 4th strategy I think about as content. It's like the meat of your meeting. And so how do you do team building right in and around your work? One, I think that actually doing work together is team building. So one, like just reframing and remembering that just by working on a project together, if you went and cooked a meal together with a group, you would build and be working together as a team and figuring out conflicts and navigating dynamics. And so just by doing work, just remember, you are actually building a team. So one way to build a team is do work together, like collaborate on something, actually work together on solving a problem. My facilitator friend Jan Keck put a spin on this phrase of connection before content and talked about it as connection through content. And so whatever it is that you're working on, so anytime in any gathering, if you notice like 1 or 2 people are mostly speaking in a gathering, just do a full pause to invite the group's contribution and insight on whatever's happening. I call it a reaction commercial break. So you're like, full pause, we just shared a whole bunch of ideas with you. All of you have really active brains, and so you're having some response to this, whether that's, this is irrelevant, or wow, this is amazing, this is perfect, I think we're done, we're talking about this too much in circles. All of you are having some reaction, so I want to pause, take 10 seconds of silence to think about what is your reaction to this content right now, and then I just want to popcorn out some of those reactions and responses. So you see how it content and work pushing forward, that's a really nice, very quick 2-minute way to pause, connect with the human beings in the group, and then come back up into the work and the content and keep pushing forward. And so that connection through the content is a really great strategy to build a team sustainably over time. And last but not least, if you want to build a really stressed, burnt out team, every meeting should end in a rush, a couple minutes late, to send people with no break to go to the bathroom or grab water, stressed out into their next meeting. That would be the perfect way to build a stressed, burnt out team. And so the alternative flip to that is making sure that all of your meetings hard stop before the official end time, and you end with something deliberate, some sort of closing that you can send people out with a little bit of peace or enthusiasm or something that is not cortisol stress filled. So here's 3 off the cuff examples. Number 1, what if you got to the end of a meeting and you said, whew, that was a lot. We have 3 minutes left in this meeting. What I'd love to do is take 2 minutes to just reflect and process everything that just happened and write one closing sentence or statement down that you're going to kick out to this group. So 2 minutes, digest the last hour that we just met together, turn that into a single sentence in the next 2 minutes, and then our final minute will just be going around kicking that one statement out. We'll end whole and head on to the next meeting. Second example, whoa, we just talked about a lot of action flowing out of here, and some of this information might be much more relevant to you a week from now or a month from now or 2 years from now. Pick up your device and say, hey Siri, can you text me just to remind me to call Joe about restarting this project on July 15th. Reminder set. So in other words, what you're inviting people to do is lean into the idea of relevant timing. Take what happened in that meeting and then put it in the future wherever it's going to be most relevant. And then my favorite and your team's absolute favorite way to close would be this. Hey, it looks like we have 10 minutes, full stop. I had a mentor once say, never leave a meeting with anything to do. 10-minute timer, see how much you can get done so that this meeting doesn't bleed into the rest of your day. Ready? Go, right? So in other words, create study hall time as a closing exercise. Amazon executives know that if they send out a brief beforehand, these execs aren't going to read it before. So they carve out the first good chunk of time in a meeting to read a 6-page narrative brief In other words, study hall. Do your homework right in the meeting. And that might even mean that you create a 90-minute meeting and you only use 37 minutes of it, and then there's co-working for the last hour. But the whole team has agreed to block their calendars to kind of chunk this whole project into one thing so they're not task and mode switching, being really inefficient. Oh, shoot, what's that? Oh yeah, right. This video is sponsored by the Connection Toolkit. See the links below. Have an awesome day.